Hello Dream Theater fans, and welcome to the very first episode of the brand new Let's Learn Falling Into Infinity album series. Today we will be exploring a new voice, a new law, a new way, and taking the time to reevaluate Y2K. That's right, another 1,000 years have passed us by, and we look forward to the next 1,000 by paying homage to John Petrucci on the guitar, John Myung on the bass, Mike Portnoy on the drums, our new best friend, Derek Sherinian on the keys, for his first and only full-length album with the band. And of course, how can we forget our favorite Canadian, James LaBrie, on the vocals. So come, as we look forward to the next 1,000 years from the year 1997. We are looking forward to the year 2000 here, folks. From 97 to 2000, by covering every single note, every single time change, every single chord progression, and a full detailed musical analysis of New Millennium by Dream Theater. So let's get ready for some mass panic and shutting down that electrical grid. New Millennium has a total track length of 8 minutes and 20 seconds, a pretty average length considering the source. This song combines a few different styles that ordinarily wouldn't mesh together, but here they work pretty well. The first style is a King Crimson hemiola-like effect, and a hemiola is when you have two different parts, usually pretty similar in nature, but one is usually longer and one is usually shorter, or in totally different time signatures, but they are played together and they move along the same compositional line until eventually they will meet up at a certain point. So that's how this whole song starts right out of the gate. Number 2 is a 1990s style heavy blues, or a heavy hard rock. This whole album kind of reminds me if the producer of the Black Crowes came in and said, okay, John Petrucci, you can play this on a 7-string, but you're going to play it my way. Okay, so very 90s alternative, a little more raw sounding than their previous two albums, not as much sparkle. The third point here is a new wave U2-esque style effect. Alright, so 2-note chords that kind of ring out over a repetitive chord progression. That's another element here. And a very simple progression on the bottom as well. So we're getting into that Bono style, and you know what that means. With Bono, we're going to be curing world hunger with this song, so stick around. Believe it or not, New Millennium actually follows a pretty basic song structure, even if on the surface it seems more complex. This song really only consists of an intro, followed by a verse, pre-chorus, chorus that repeats, a lengthy bridge section, and a final chorus to end out the song. Now, the tendency of the band to have unique sections is what makes this song so much more complex and opaque than it really is, or I should say the song structure really is. Different riffs, different instrumentations, and outright different melodies are used on certain points to give it the illusion of being something that it's not. Not to mention there is an extreme amount of layering throughout the arrangement. So the final thing that I must mention is that John Petrucci uses a 7-string guitar for this song in standard tuning, and we must do the same. Oh, and let's not forget that John Myung, the bassist, is playing a weird instrument called the Chapman stick, which emulates the sound of a guitar at certain points. This adds even more confusion to our already confusing lives. Now, without further time wasted, let's get into the intro bit, which includes 4 different elements playing 4 different things at the same time. But I'm only going to include 3 of these because that's really what makes up the crux of this. So check it out. The entire introduction sequence is in 4/4 timing, and the one part that gives us that sense the best is Derek Sherinian's synth line. It's basically just a 2-measure phrase that repeats 8 times. The shape is based around an F-sharp power chord with some other intervals strewn throughout, but it's basically an F sharp key center at the beginning here. So it sounds like this. I'll play it slow. And it just keeps repeating that until the end of the introduction. So we're basically just going here, octave, fifth, and then to the flat seventh, to the fourth. So those are the intervals that are at play. Now, nowhere in this introduction do we get a sense of what the tonality is. So we don't know whether it's major or minor because, hey, there's no third. So this is a very ambiguous part. Almost geometric sounding, right? And this ambiguity leads to the lead instruments, being able to get more creative on the top and have more control over what the function actually is. So that's kind of cool. But spoiler alert, this introduction doesn't do any of that. It stays ambiguous and geometric the entire time. So, and that keeps going 8 times. Derek Sherinian is all on his own with this part, holding down the fort, but he is estranged from the rest of the band. The other 3 members, John Petrucci on the guitar, John Myung on the Chapman stick, and Mike Portnoy on the glockenspiel, are more or less on the same page, but offset by 1 beat from what Derek Sherinian is playing. So this is that hemiola that I was talking about, or that King Crimson vibe. So check out how that sounds. Instead of a 2-measure phrase, we have a 4-measure phrase that's repeated 4 times instead of 8. But either way, we have 16 measures that make up the whole thing. Let me play the whole thing slow for you first. That's the beginning. A little bit of a weird downbeat. And that's the start of it. So basically what's happening is we have a fake out C sharp at the beginning. Alright, but we're going right to an F sharp position right after that. That fake out C sharp might actually represent the future of this song because a vast majority of this is in C sharp minor. So could be a little foreshadowing on John Myung's part. So pretty cool. But like I said before, everything is offset by 1 beat. So the main focus, the main riff is actually coming in on beat 2. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Instead of before with Derek's synth coming in on beat 1 very strongly. This is the offset hemiola that I was talking about before. Gives it that King Crimson vibe that we love so much. Listen to the album Discipline if you want a good reference for that. Other than that, it kind of just repeats 4 times and just interacts with the other part as we move along. But like I said, it's a very crucial part of this composition. And it's also probably the most heard part. This is probably the part that most people are focusing on with their ears because I believe it's the loudest. It's the loudest part and it sticks out the most. John Petrucci's guitar follows pretty closely along with John Myung's Chapman stick, but it's in a higher octave and it's more syncopated. So this guitar part follows along with that same F sharp 7 sus 4 idea, but this time without the 7. Big whoop. It's still just as ambiguous. Ready? Start over. See that? Kind of weird. Took me a while to get this. Start over. Alright, so right on that 14th fret at the end there is actually the beginning again, okay? So this 12th fret leads right back to the beginning. So this is another 4-measure phrase played 4 times, just like John Myung's part. All the same chord tones, just in a higher octave, and it really does go along with this part pretty well, right? Now, this can be broken up into various different timings. Even though we are in 4/4, this can be felt out like this. Ready? 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1. Right? So 3/4, 3/4, 4/4, 3/4, 3/4. That's a 4/4 sandwich with 2 pieces of 3/4 bread on the outside. So that's kind of crazy. There's more bread than meat in this one here. So I don't know what that means, but we're going to go with that. And last but not least, we have Mike Portnoy's Glockenspiel, which plays along with the Chapman stick. The rhythm alternates between being on beat and off beat, much like the guitar part, which, by the way, caps off this whole section with a nice slide, snare drum included. The Chapman stick then sets up a repetitive rhythm that will be seen throughout the course of the song, so it's very important that we understand exactly what's happening here. Simple enough, we have some pedal C sharps alternating between 2 different time signatures. And that goes like this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Just like that. Alternating between 2 measures of 4/4, which could be seen as 8/4, and 1 measure of 7/4. Now the 7/4 measure is just 8 minus 1, so you're skipping a beat on that second half. Those short 2-note groupings of 1/8 notes that play just the octaves are the best indicators for the timing of this section. At the end of the 4/4 section we have 2 of those. At the end of the 7/4 section we have 4. So that's the best way to feel out when this part actually moves on. Ready? 1, 2, and then for the 7, 1, 2, 3, 4. This bass riff continues 4 times total, with the rest of the band adding different elements as it progresses. The first of which being Derek Sherinian on the synthesizer, with a high octave C-sharp version of the introduction arpeggio. Check this out. The guitar then enters and gives us a much needed sense of tonality. It also sets up what will become a verse later on in the song. This bit gives us a little bit more of a Middle Eastern feel. Now what you want to do before you even play a note is turn the gain down a little bit, or better yet, turn the volume knob down on your guitar so you're not, blowing your neighbors out of the water. This is more of a softer part. So check this out. We're starting with a slide from the 2nd to the 4th on the A string. That's B to C sharp. So we're coming into our root note. So then hop up an octave, back down to the root, and then that open B is the flatted 7th. So this is really a C sharp 7th chord. Alright? Now, the next part we do this. Same slide, but you have to change the finger. Now I like to use my pinky for this. And then you hit those 2 notes on the top. That's a minor 6th or an A going to a 5th. So we're resolving downward this time. Alright, so we're really scaling down from the octave down to the 5th. Watch, ready? Octave, 7, 6 to the 5th. And we just keep going downward. Now the next few notes though, those are played by itself. We don't need the C sharp ringing out below. This is an F, but really I'm going to call it an E sharp going to an F sharp, because that would be the major 3rd of a C sharp chord. So this means that we are in a C sharp Phrygian dominant, and I'll explain that a little bit later. The second half is what gives us the Phrygian. Watch this. Octave, let the C sharp ring. Get that nice flat 2nd up at the top at the 7th fret, right just above the octave. And then, as all those are ringing out, you do the open B string once again. So this is really a flat 2 or a flatted 9th with a flatted 7th on the top. a very dramatic and a very tense sound. And then we do a similar idea going downward again like this. But this time, we got to change up the rhythm. You hear that change? And then that allows us to play extra notes on the bottom. So we're going 3, 4, 5. All right, literally on the frets and in the chord function. Sounds very happy when you play it like that. So like I said, this is all a C-sharp Phrygian dominant function. That means we have a C-sharp Phrygian sound, which is created by the flatted 2, right? And we have a dominant function because it's major. All right, we're turning this 7th chord into a major chord with a flatted 2 on the top of it. It's an incredibly dissonant and incredibly tense way to get through this, but it's also very characteristic of that Eastern feel. Okay, like we're in the middle of the desert. But that little trip through the desert is short-lived because we are greeted with an extension of this same idea that makes it sound like a totally different area. Check it out. The way that the vibe of this situation really changes is in the bass part, and it's basically outlining the same thing with the C sharp, but then once it goes to the 7/4 measure, it's going to an E6. So it's almost as if it's playing a C sharp 7 to E. Sounds like we're in like a power pop band or something, right? Something the Beatles would write, you know, a Beatles in Japan would write. Alright, so that's the biggest difference there. And that's also bouncing between the relative major and minor, just like this guitar part does. Ready? We have the same octave. A little more gain, too. And here, ready? There's the E. Same timing, too. Two different variations on the first and second ending with the E, but the C sharp is exactly the same. So, like I said, making the same thing with two different vibes, and that E is the major deciding factor here. So we have the E on the bottom with this. You want to let that ring for the first note. So the E and the G sharp are going to ring out together to create that nice major third, very consonant. And then here, that's the 4th to the 5th scale degree. Okay, so 6th fret, 7th fret, 9th fret, G sharp, A, B. Alright, just like we did on top of the C sharp. Except we're on an E. It's the same exact 3 intervals, and it makes all of the difference in the world. Alright, one more time, nice and slow. C sharp 7. Nice slide there. C sharp 7. And then E, this time, we're going down. Okay, we're coming from the 3rd to the 4th to the 3rd to the 2nd scale degree. But we don't resolve it back down to E now, do we? Now, before we get to that, we actually have a guitar that's playing this exact same part up an octave. So I've included a tab for that if you want to learn that and really play this accurately. But for now, just enjoy the way the two parts sound together. This then segues to a completely unique intro section, which gives us our first real challenge in the guitar part. I included the bass here because there's a little bit of variation in the chord progression that goes on, a little bit more development from the previous sections. Check it out. We start on the C sharp, that's still the 1 chord. Ready? In 7. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. E, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. That's the flat 3, back to the 1, and then 4, 4 to B. So basically you're hitting the 1 to the flat 3, and then to the flat 7 at the end. And that'll resolve nicely back into C sharp, which is the 1 chord. So I figured I'd just include that there for you. Now that we have some context, let's figure out what's going on with this guitar part. It's mostly in a C sharp minor pentatonic scale, but not entirely. There's one note that's not in the scale, and I'll point that out a little bit later. But for now, let's play it slowly, and I'll count through the time changes as we move. Ready? 1, 2, 3, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, and 4. So, just a little bit of time changing going on there, right? You got 3 measures of 7 to begin it, and then 2 measures of 4 to end it. As far as the articulation, you want to mute most of these notes. Ready? Watch. Mute, 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 until you get to the higher notes, right? Once you hit that B string, you want to slide, and then unmute the other notes to give it a little more freedom, so to speak. And then we go up to here. Same deal. You're muting the lower notes and letting the high notes run free. Right, and then right back to muting. Now, I'm going to make a little note about that slide down from this 13th fret. Watch. You're actually going to count that slide as the first pick. So you're not going to slide down and pick it like this. You're not doing that. You're going to be doing this. You see that? The pick is on the 13th fret. And that note is not picked, so make sure. It's just a little tiny detail there. And remember when I was talking about that one note that wasn't included in the C sharp minor pentatonic scale? Well, it's right up here. After you play this, that 11, 12, 14, we're on the 13th and the 16th. That 16th fret is not part of the C sharp minor pentatonic scale. In fact, it's part of the C sharp major pentatonic scale. So this might be a little bit of unintended mode mixture over here. Now, a lot of these intervals that occur are directly conducive to the pentatonic model. All right, we're hitting a lot of perfect fourths, a lot of leaps, a lot of fifths, right? And a lot of slides going on as well. And that very geometric type of shape that we were getting from the introduction. So this is kind of a rehash of the intro, but more complex. We also have major second intervals going on, and these sort of sus2 and sus4 shapes that we also saw in the introduction. With all that in mind, let's go through this bit with a fine-tooth comb. The first measure is on top of the C sharp, so every single note has to do with that. We have the root going down the 5th, and then flat 7 to 4. That's just like the introduction, right? And then you come back down to that. That's just a little pedal point C sharp on the bottom. So far we're just dealing with this big power chord and sort of an 11th chord, so to speak, because you have the 11th and the flatted 7th. So, and then you come up to here, same notes. That's the 11th going up to the 5th, and then the root to the 11th. So once again, more 11th chords. It's a lot of jazziness going on. Then the context changes to the note E, and we have an F sharp type of pattern going on here. So here's that F sharp minor 7 going up to here. That's an 11th going to the 5th, so F sharp minor 11th once again, but on top of an E. So a lot of those chord extensions actually do line up with E at the end of the day. You have the 9th, the 6th, and the root, and the 6th once again. So this is like an E13, E6, right? Makes perfect sense. Or E69, even better yet. I thought we were escaping those for the time being, but I guess I was completely wrong. It's a new millennium, but a new kind of 69 as well. So coming back into it. Alright, so that's basically a B power chord being played on top of that as well. That's basically an F sharp, a B, and an F sharp. That's a 9th. Okay, so we have an add 9 going on here on top of the E. Now, we could always say that this is within a bigger C sharp context, and I would agree with that. But we're going to get nitty gritty here, so we're going to keep going. After those 3 high notes, we hit this mode mixture of a pentatonic model, alright, because we're hitting the G sharp here, which is the 5th of a C sharp, or the 3rd of an E, makes perfect sense. And then here we have the 16th fret, that's a D sharp, so that's the 2nd of the C sharp. Alright, so you can just say it's the second of the C sharp minor or C sharp major scale. But it doesn't exist in the minor pentatonic. That's the important part to distinguish here. Then we hit this bit that looks like an F sharp sus2, or some kind of like a G sharp 7, or even better yet, a C sharp sus4. Okay, so that's the same as the arpeggio that we saw earlier on, or at least what we've been setting up in the synthesizer part, right? That's part of that. We're just playing a very tiny bit of it though, and then sliding back into the beginning. So we did all this. That just repeats again, so a little bit of continuity. Then the second half changes. It's actually a little more simple. That same F sharp minor 11th, then we're just skipping down in fourths and thirds. Just going down all the same notes that we've been seeing, right? That's that C sharp 7 sus that we've been looking at the whole time. And then we hit down at the bottom here. That's basically the, what is that? An F sharp, a B, and a C sharp. So that's 11th, flat 7th, and root going right back in. So that's how we resolve back into C sharp. The very first part of that bit is repeated in the synthesizer to create a harmony between the guitar part that moves to a higher register. Alright, so Derek Sherinian is staying on the same part, creating a harmony with John Petrucci as he changes the riff. Alright, so it morphs a little bit as it moves along. It also pans from left to right as it goes. So that repetition is pretty interesting there. It's actually a much more simple part, but it acts to color in what John Petrucci is already doing. So watch. So it's just taking that first part of John's part and using it to harmonize what's going on to give it a little bit more color. Here's that repetition. So it's basically a simpler part, well, about as simple as something in 7/8 within 7/4 can be, but it is repetitive. It's just the same thing, so Derek had to learn less notes, although he does join in at the end with John Petrucci's part. However, that's besides the point. That repetition is used to color in what John Petrucci is doing when he moves around and does some fancier stuff. So, nice compositional move. Listen to how those two parts sound together and the convergence between those two ideas. So after that geometric Ouroboros, we come into the fifth section of the introduction, which introduces yet another theme, a crucial theme, that we're going to be seeing later in the song. That is a simple single note line that is basically doubling the bass part and will serve as the chorus section later on in the song. Now you don't want to have your gain up too high for this, so try to keep it down a little bit. We have a very simplistic eighth note progression going on here. So we're starting on C sharp, C sharp, B, F sharp, E, C sharp, B, F sharp, E, C sharp, B, F sharp, E, C sharp. So let's take some time to just go over the root notes there and what their function is. C sharp is the 1, B is the flat 7th, going to F sharp, which is the 4th, to E, which is the flatted 3rd. Now that E could also serve as a flat 7 to the F sharp. Okay, so we could be dealing with a C sharp minor 7th chord and an F sharp with a flat 7th on the bottom as well. And that happens the same way when it comes up the octave. This B note goes over the bar line. So that should not be on beat 1, but it is. So it actually offsets the chord changes by 1/2 of a beat. Watch. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. So that F sharp is coming in a little bit late to just make it a little more fancy and less simplistic, ironically enough. A lot of people think this a riff like this for Dream Theater is a joke, you know. It's too simple. It's not heavy enough. I don't like it. Well, guess what? They just proved you wrong. There's also something on the second ending that we have to take care of, and that's this ping pong riff from hell. It's all just C sharp, alright? So it's a very simple octave jump, but it's played in the most annoying way possible, and you don't even know it's there. Here we go. Ready? Watch. So you're basically going 3 on the first lower octave like this. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. And then 1, 1, 1. So if you just remember that. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 1, 1. Now remember how I said this guitar part doubles the bass line? Fact check, mostly true. Check out how the bass handles this instead. So right off the bat we can tell there's a difference when John Myung uses the same 2 strings to play those notes. He's playing all the same roots, however, he's using only 2 strings instead of 3 like you just saw before. So it's mostly like this. And that's the other difference, watch. He's extending that F sharp to go a little bit further, and which causes a little bit of a scuffle between the guitar and the bass part. Listen to that again. And of course, the estrangement and alienation felt by keyboardist Derek Sherinian is in full effect here as well. Listen to the synthesizer part. The guitar and the bass are hanging around in the key of C sharp, right, with this part. But Derek is hanging around in F sharp land, and E as well. So it's almost like he's playing the second half of the chorus, but on the first half, along with the other 2 guys. So who's actually controlling the key center here? This takes this to an entirely new level of ambiguity, right? It's almost as if we're playing the intro part. Derek's on the intro part, and John Petrucci and John Myung are on the part we've been on for the past 4 sections, right? With the C sharp with the flat 7th, but Derek is opting to stay at the beginning of the song where it was an F sharp with the flat 7th. So this does create some very interesting intervals, a lot of flat 7s, which is kind of characteristic of this song anyway. A lot of flat 7s, bluesiness, but 2 keys at the same time, I'm going to say. Mostly C sharp though, I'm going to keep the focus on that. The final section of the intro continues with the same moving line as before, but replaces the dainty sound of the single notes with a big beefy 7-string riff covered in bacon grease and motorcycle exhaust. And here are the chords. Ready? Start on C sharp, just like always. B, F sharp, E. You do that 4 times. So not too much to say. It's actually pretty easy. We're basically on the 1 chord C sharp, going to a B, the flat 7th, F sharp being the 4th, and E being the flat and 3rd. So nothing that we haven't seen yet. And it's all just to make it a little bit more heavy. Now, the tricky part here is that everything is syncopated except the very last one. So check this out. Ready? 1, 2, 3, and 4. 1, 2, and 4. Before, all of the single notes were syncopated, but this time the last one is not, and John Petrucci is actually joining in with John Myung after he stubbornly refused to with the previous section. So that's kind of cool. A little bit of variation that's kind of hard to notice, but it is there. Okay, one more time. 2, 3, very heavy too. 4, right on B4 there. The lead guitar on top of this section always reminded me of U2, which is the exact opposite of heavy. This is more like a soy and tofu latte that you get from the barista at your local internet cafe. This part also reminds me of the incredibly annoying subtleties that JP throws in there to make this a little harder than it has to be to learn. It's not hard to play, it's just hard to remember. So not hard to play, just a lot of variations going on. We start off in a C sharp position right up here. A perfect fourth, which is actually the fifth of the C sharp. So, with that rhythm moving right to here, to that B syncopated at the very end. C sharp 5 to B5. We then move back to C sharp 5 again. But this time you slide into the B shape a little bit earlier, and then resolve it to an F sharp major. Okay, so this indicates that A sharp up top, that indicates an F sharp major chord, or a major 4 chord. So we now know that that 4 chord from before is not a minor 4 chord. Remember, there's not a lot of thirds here, so this is the first time we're actually getting a taste of a third, and it's a major third, so let's remember that. So, F sharp to B to F sharp. 4 chord to flat 7th chord back to 4, and then we hit back to 1 again, like this. So once again, some variation, some 16th notes added in for some flair that you can barely hear in the song. All this sounds like straight eighths to me the entire time, but it's a little more complicated than that. So we hit on the 12th fret up here. This is the flat 3rd. To the 9th, to the root, to the 9th, and then back to the root. So, now that's just going 3, 2, 1 in minor. So we have a minor third now on top of the C sharp. So C sharp minor. Now in this song we don't always have C sharp minor. We actually have C sharp major, which we already had once before, and we're going to have again later on. But kind of interesting here. It's a little more moody as well. I like it. And then we come back in for the second half. That's just the same deal as the first half, but we have a slight rhythmic variation, longer chords on that F sharp and B for a little more impact. So like I was saying before, not difficult to play, but very difficult to remember because of those little subtleties in there, especially the 16th notes. And the syncopated 8th notes that appear in different orders depending on what measure you're in. And the fact that you only get 8 measures to play this until the very end of the song. So it's not like you get to spend a lot of time with it and practice it with the band as you're playing it. It just comes and goes just like that. So, as opposed to, that's just a slight little variation, but it makes all the difference in the world. And if you don't learn it right, you're not learning the song correctly. So you better go back, just put a magnifying glass under these little parts and, you know, spend an hour learning 8 measures. That's just how Dream Theater rolls. That last slide brings us into the bowels of a low C sharp power chord being struck as quarter notes to set up the verse riff, which is going to play quite a few times, but take a listen to it for now. Now, there are 2 main elements that make up the bedrock of this part. That low C sharp power chord on the 7th string, which doesn't sound nearly as heavy on this guitar, which is also the second element which makes this up. We have a little bit here, just a little arpeggio, doubling the keyboard part, which is actually made up of 2 different synths. Sounds nasty tight. Now, although the keyboard is obviously the dominating force here, the acoustic guitar adds a nice layer of percussive transients to give us that extra push right into our noggins. It's a very simple line on a very dry acoustic guitar, and it sounds like this. 2, 3, and then it repeats. So we basically have a C sharp going to a B, going to a G. Now all of these notes have to be rung out. If you're not ringing them out, you're not going to get the proper effect. This is like that effect that Trent Reznor was trying to get by putting all those guitars on the wall and plucking one string on each one as it resonates throughout the room. But this is a more compact version of that. I don't know what I'm talking about. Here we go. So C sharp, B, and G. That's the root, the flat 7, and the sharp 4th. Now that creates a Lydian dominant sound. A Lydian dominant scale is essentially a major scale with a sharp 4th, which is the Lydian sound, and a flatted 7th, which adds to the dominant sound. Of course, we have a major 3rd in there as well. But we have that type of sound. Eerie sound, and it's definitely an exotic sound as well. I'd say it's Eastern, but it's more like if you lived in the Middle East and you had a lot of holes in your brain. We're about to plug up those holes with this intellectual exercise into what this scale actually is. And trust me, it's going to be a doozy. We start on C sharp, we go up to D sharp as the 2. Makes sense so far. Now we need a 3rd. The 3rd note of the scale is going to be there. Okay? Sounds like Mary Had a Little Lamb, doesn't it? That's because it's exactly what it is. Mary Had a Little Lamb is within the Lydian dominant scale. How funny is that? I'm just kidding. As we go further, that will become untrue. Fact check, mostly untrue. Now, this note right here you would usually refer to as an F. But because we're in a C sharp scale, and that's the 3rd note in the C sharp, and we need to go one note beyond D sharp, which would be some type of E, it can't be an F. It's going to be an E sharp instead. So, E sharp, just like that. And then we move on, and we do something even more egregious. We're going up to the 5th fret, which ordinarily we would call this a G, which I did call it a G before, so I was technically incorrect in my previous iteration of myself. This is not just a G because we're on the 4th scale degree, or a sharp 4th scale degree. Notice this, the alphabet goes C sharp, D sharp, E sharp. What comes after E? Some type of F, right? But we're on an F right here, and that's an E sharp. So we have to pull that up a whole step and rename it F double sharp. So an F double sharp is going to be our sharp 4 in this situation. So the most exotic note of the scale gets the most exotic name. Can you believe that? We then move on to a G sharp. That's nice. That's a 5th. Going to an A sharp. That's the major 6th. A B natural. That's nice. That's the flatted 7th. Going right back up to the root for C sharp. So all in all, the Lydian dominant scale, C sharp, D sharp, E sharp, F double sharp, G sharp, A sharp, B, and C sharp for a nice 7-note scale. And of course, very exotic. It's a really cool sound. I really love the way it comes about. Like I said, it's very ominous and very eerie, and a perfect way to get us through the desert or a haunted house desert with Derek Sherinian and John Mayung. Okay, enough talk about exotic scale semantics. Let's move into the verse part, which I will dub as James LaBrie moves to Saudi Arabia and joins an Alice in Chains cover band.
A single star behind me, a red sky burns ahead, a lonely light below me, awake among the dead.
The electric guitar doesn't do all too much except change rhythm halfway through. This will require us to cover the pre-verse as well. So this is going to be the pre-verse and the verse. We start on C sharp, that low beefy power chord from heck, on the 1 chord. Ready? Quarter notes. And we're going to do this 4 times. No vocals during this part, just bow, 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 bow. Now these next 3 times are going to have vocals. A single star behind me. Do that 3 times just like that, and then we have a variation. An elongated dotted quarter note going to 8 notes. So quick notes there, back to the quarters, then back to the elongated ones. Just a little bit of variation, and that's the very last one. Okay, anyway, enough of that slide. We're not going to get there yet. You got to be patient with me here. You're going to be sitting through a long one with this one. So we have a mishmash of 3 different rhythms, basically. The quarter notes, a dotted quarter note, 1/8 notes. Just kind of going in different orders, variations to keep it interesting, right? What Dream Theater does best. Now, the tricky part about this is those first quarter notes only go 7 times. Usually a part goes 8 times, an even number before switching. This time, however, it goes 7 times and doesn't even let you finish the first line of lyrics or the first half of lyrics before it starts. So the variation starts before the second half of the verse even starts. But the second half of the verse is where all the variations are. Unbelievable, right? Just something that it's not hard to do, but it is there and it makes it more difficult to learn the song. The vocals during this section utilize perfect 4th intervals that sound like this. All over C sharp. It's basically a C sharp minor blues in a way, but those perfect 4ths sort of remind me of Alice in Chains. That's why I made the reference before. It also makes it sound kind of spooky. Especially in this context because there is a little bit of added dissonance that might not be so obvious. That F double sharp, or G for simplicity's sake, happens right in between that vocal harmony that occurs. So the vocal harmony is singing F sharp to G sharp, and that note occurs right smack dab in the middle there, right? Just a little annoyance right in between, a nuisance. And that creates a lot of dissonance. In fact, it creates a cross-instrumental dissonance and an unintended blues scale. When you play them as a sequence like that, F sharp, G, and G sharp, that's just a C sharp minor blues. And there's also a little bit more to this as well. If you play those 3 notes together, which is basically what's happening here, because both of those parts are happening simultaneously, you get a really nasty dissonance between that. 3 half steps in a row. F sharp, G, and G sharp. Let's get that a little louder. F sharp, G, and G sharp. It's perfect in time for Halloween. You might want to get your Alfred Hitchcock movies out. That's F sharp, G, and G sharp. Or better yet, it's F sharp, F double sharp, and G sharp being played at the same time. And yes, that vibe does occur in this verse. It's just not so obvious. Now, is it? And it's also hard to tell because they're keeping it so cool with the blues scale, right? The blues is always cool. Gotta put your sunglasses on and stand on the top of a moving truck, just like John Petrucci in the live video. I've brought that up before. Now let's get into the next part of the verse, which is an extension. We move up a whole step into the key of D sharp this time, with a similar vibe from an earlier intro part. Let's see if you can spot it. Remember I said at the beginning, this song is filled with the same part, but just played in different ways? That's how Dream Theater rolls, by the way. Well, here we're in D sharp, Phrygian dominant. We're going to be playing it like this. An octave sliding from the 4th into the 6th, going to the 8th fret like that. That's D sharp to D sharp. And then to the flatted 7th, flat 6, 5, major 3rd, 4th, 5th. And then octave, a little dip into that, which is the flatted 2, sliding into the flat 7 once again. Alright, so that's all the function of the chords. Now, you want to add John Petrucci's signature sound to this, which is a combination of two different things. The first is a lot of vibrato. See that? Slow vibrato. In addition to what I just did there, which is sliding in from above the note, right? That gives it that sort of Middle Eastern feel that I was talking about, like you're playing a sitar. If you ever seen anybody play a sitar, they slide in from above the note to get that sound. Now this is going to be exaggerated a little bit later on, so make sure you take this to heart. Those last few chords, or last two chords I should say, is a big E power chord bouncing between the low and high octave. This is the flat 3 chord. And it's just as simple as that, half notes. 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Nice break from the complexity. And then we have a change in meter right at the end for the F sharp. Alright, so that's going to be the 4 chord, and yes, it's going to be a major 4 chord, but this time with triplets in a 6/8 beater. And you want to make sure you are accenting those properly as well. Every 3 is going to be an accent, so we're hitting that downbeat real hard. To set up the next part. The other thing about this is that these are power chords, so they don't really give us any context as to what the chord function actually is. We actually need some help from the vocals to figure that out, so let's listen to that.
I sense a wind of change.
All of those notes represent a major tonality between these two chords, because we have the 3rd of the E and we have the 3rd of the F sharp being directly outlined. The F sharp being the resolution point. So it's definitely a major connotation here, and that's a major 4 chord, by the way, not a minor 4 chord. I love that we're finally getting thirds here. It took long enough. We had an entire intro completely bare of thirds, and now we have thirds all over the place. I'm starting to dig it. In addition to that, we have that D sharp, which is going to be considered a secondary dominant, a secondary. It's a secondary dominant moving up stepwise to the E, right? So you're basically using it as a step stool from C sharp to get to D sharp to E to F sharp. So it can't get any more basic than that. A step stool up to get back down to C sharp, which is our next section. So that 6/8 rhythm from the F sharp prior leads into a buttery smooth C sharp minor pentatonic riff, or blues riff. Now this is a wah guitar doubled by a non-wah guitar. Non-wah, Benoit. We're not going to go there. Too dark, too dark. It's also doubled by Derek Sherinian's organ, which is a totally different kind of dark. So right off the bat, the first thing you really want to focus on is getting the articulation right. Where all the pull-offs are, where the bends are, and where the mutes are. Okay, so pay very, very, very close attention to that, otherwise you're not going to get it right. Another thing we got to focus on is the notes, right? We have a blues line going here, so C sharp to B, back up, that's 1 and a flat 7th. That E is the flatted 3rd, G sharp is the 5th, alright? So minor 7th basically. And then we go like this. Notice I muted those first 2 notes. And then after I bent, I released it and then I pulled off. So really I'm just going like this. 3 picks to get me through the rest of that measure. Alright, once again. Nice sound. We come in to repeat that same idea, but this time with power chords, big crunchy power chords going through that whole thing, and that's just straight up blues, by the way. Flat 3rd, 4th, flat 5th, and back down. And basically you're going mute, mute, open, open, open. Alright? And that's basically the theme of the whole thing. And I must also mention that every other measure really hammers that 6/8 timing home because every single beat has a different note on it. Watch. Or 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Alright, so every single beat has a note, right? To a hammer, everything is a nail, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, bam. And it's not like that on the first or third measures either because we have some syncopation. But there, no syncopation at all, just hammer it right into the ground. The next half of this pre-chorus adds some different elements, starting with Derek Sherinian's keyboards on the top. That basically outlines the blues notes with the perfect fifth, the flat fifth, and the fourth. Let's hear that again. Oh, with that awesome downbeat style James LaBrie vocal. Can't go wrong with that. Pretty raunchy sounding actually. Raunchy and dirty, just like Derek Sherinian's organ. Anyway, nothing else to be said about that. What's also raunchy is this guitar that comes in over the top, which is a higher octave of John Petrucci's original riff. We're no longer in 6/8, but we're in 6/4 now, which, believe it or not, is a very different feel. We're basically playing all the same notes up the octave with a similar articulation, but with a little added flair toward the end of it. And we start all the way up here at the 11th fret. All the same exact articulation there, but just on different frets. And all the same notes as well. Once again. And you just have to slide into this 7th position real quickly to get those blues notes in there, starting on E. See that? But still the same articulation. Second time around we're doing something a little different though. So those last few notes there, all downbeats by the way. Remember, we're still hammering in those downbeats every other measure. We're doing double stops here. 9th on the G and B, 11th, and then a half step bend, back down to the 9th. And that caps off the whole thing. So, and that's just a classic blues technique right there, alright? Just using all those frets, kind of adding a Dorian idea into the occasion as well. So, beautiful sound. And also don't forget to pick every single note on that last part. Don't miss a single downstroke there. Now, with that in mind, let's take a listen to probably one of my favorite James LaBrie moments on this whole song.
Welcome in a new millennium.
I just love the way he sings that with so much attitude, dirt, and gusto. A little bit raunchy for James LaBrie. It's a nice contrast between that goodnight kiss in the nightgown, if you know what I'm talking about. He's a very tender and passionate man. Next up, we hit the first chorus section, which keeps a lot of the elements from the previous iteration the same, but the major differences come within the orchestration, namely the guitar part. Hopefully you notice that the guitar is now covering what the synthesizers and piano have been doing the entire time. Okay, I'll hit it real slow and then describe what's going on after. Feels a lot like the intro, yeah? Well, that's because it's the same exact arpeggio. It's that C sharp with the sus4. Alright? And that's a C sharp 7 with a sus4. The beginning was really an F sharp 7 with a sus4, but it did go to a C sharp 7 with the sus4 in the synthesizer. Remember, this is mirroring the synth part. Very cool. And that's all the same thing, right? Until we hit this little descending line at the end. Now that's got to be all alternate picked, and it moves pretty quickly as well. It's just going right down the scale, but the only difference is we have an A sharp in the melody there. Right there. Now that indicates a natural sixth, which I think means a Dorian mode in this context. The A sharp is also the major third of the F sharp chord, which, remember this? The dyad riff, the U2 style riff? Well, it's the same exact note but being played in this context, so a little bit different but exactly the same. The final bit of this chorus is a little tag, an instrumental tag at the end to really drive the point home. It's the same arpeggio idea, but this time Derek is coming in with his synthesizer to double it with the guitar, so he's coming back to his old stomping grounds, but the two of them are playing it this time, and John Mayung is bringing back that old C sharp pedal riff with the stick. It's all the same notes, but it's shortened up with a hard stop at the end. Right, and a nice slide going in. Now, this goes into verse number 2, which is pretty lengthy, so I'm going to separate it into 3 different sections to make it easier to understand. For this bit, you're going to want to click on the clean channel, make it dry as a bone, and if you can, double it with this cool sitar effect. Prince Turkey bin Petrucci. Let's get into these notes to see how we encapsulate that vibe. This once again is hearkening back to the idea in intros 2 and 3, but rhythmically this has more in common with the first verse than anything else, so let me play it for you real quick. Notes remain very, very similar from the earlier section, so I don't really need to cover that too much. C sharp Phrygian dominant, right, with the flatted 7th and that flatted 2. What really changes here is the exaggeration of the techniques that we were using earlier. So just like John Petrucci uses a lot of vibrato, we're going to really exaggerate it and double it up, alright? So we're going all the way into that Eastern sphere of influence. This is East meets East, not East meets West. So here we go. Watch. You're going to do a trill basically 3 times. And then add a ton of vibrato at the end of it, but a fast vibrato, and you're going to dead stop right at the end of it. See that? So then it gives a little bit of breathing room between the next phrase. On the next part, we're going to go like this. So you want to slide in from above the note on each one of those. See that? Real slow. Slide in, slide in, slide in, and then here you can just go up to the regular one. That's another thing that brings us into that Eastern sphere, right? That sliding in like that is very much what you would do on a sitar if you ever played one. You want to continue that same style heading into the second part of the verse, but here we got to turn on the overdrive pedal. This part of verse 2 plays the exact same line from before with that sitar-inspired reality, but this time we're plugging it through what sounds like an overdrive pedal. And I specifically say overdrive because it literally sounds like they just plugged it right into a Boss Super OD2 or something like that. Because it really does sound like that, kind of like a cheap overdrive pedal. Kind of funny if you ask me. But it works with the part, and it's also not too assuming within the context of everything else. It's kind of hard to hear the guitar part with all the other crazy samples and stuff going on during this verse anyway. Just like this. Really exaggerate it that much. Nice. Now I also failed to mention that there's a seriously awesome bass line that's doubled by John Mayung and Derek Sherinian. Alright, so Sherinian is playing it on the synthesizer, and it sounds absolutely killer. Listen to this. Looks like video game Sherinian is at it again with his 90s inspired nostalgia. This sounds like it could have come off Contra from the NES, or even a PC port of the Doom game. Now that's way better. The only other thing there is to say about this verse 2 is that there is an incredibly jarring background vocal going on that'll give you so many heebie-jeebies. More heebie-jeebies than Screamin' Jay Hawkins with a bone through his nose. Check this out.
Keep your head up. Keep your head up. Keep your head up. Keep your head up.
Did you have any idea that was there at all? Because I didn't, and kind of wish I still didn't as well, because this keeps peeking into my head at the least opportune moments during the course of my day. Online for the bank, keep your head up. At the grocery store with the watermelons and the cantaloupes, keep your head up. The watermelons and the cantaloupes are just hanging out peacefully, not bothering anybody. Keep your head up. On the phone with the girlfriend, keep your head up. And getting hung in the town square for treason, keep your head up. I can't keep my head up. I think I'm going to need some psychiatric help after this one. Paging Dr. Kevin Moore. This final section of verse 2 recalls the same idea going up a whole step to D sharp that we saw in verse 1, alright? So remember, a lot of these parts are very basic. This is just a long verse. That's all it is. We're going up a whole step to D sharp to basically follow the same progression, but with a totally different and beefy 7-string riff. I'll play it slowly first and I'll break down the whole thing. Notice how this is the same, with that same 6/8 at the end. But let's backtrack a little bit to the very first part. So here's the first measure. Pay very close attention to the 16th notes that come in there. They're right on the first beat. 1E and 2 and 3 and 4 and, okay? 1E and 2 and 3 and 4 and. Remember that because we're going to come back to that. Okay, now we're going to head up to the next part. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. Okay, moving on to the next part, we have a very similar idea. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. That's exactly the same. And then this. 1 and 2 and 3 and boom. Instead of hitting those 2 octaves, we're just hitting a nice big beefy power chord right on that flat 2 to signify that we're definitely doing a Phrygian thing. Okay, once again, 1 and 2 and 3 and boom, and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. Big time beat 4 right at the end. The last part, we changed the ending once again. This is actually a third unique ending. Doing the same thing here. That doesn't change. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 ends. And then we go to this. 1 and 2 and 3. Alright, did you catch that? 1 and 2 and 3, slide. And then hammer into that next part. So we're changing the entire ending right there. We're going 1 and 2 and 3, slide into an A. Now is that a Lydian thing? I'm not entirely sure, but remember, we were in Lydian dominant before, and that A is indeed a tritone away, and we are creating a Lydian environment for both that D sharp and the A, ironically enough. So yeah, that could be considered the Lydian dominant mode there. But because of the way it's played and because that A is separate from the other part, it sounds like it's coming as its own thing, so we're not really coming in as its own thing, I should say. And we're not playing it as a chord or anything like that. If we were, it would sound pretty insane. It would sound like that. It would be a D sharp with a flat 7th and a sharp 4th. But here, I think we're just having an A Lydian come in for that brief moment. Ready? Once again. 1 and 2 and 3. And then that helps us to get right to our E chord. So an A chord can easily go to an E chord because A is the 4 to E. So that's really nothing too crazy here. But I'm still going to say we're on the 2 going up to the flat 3, but we're just using A as sort of a fancier way, almost a 4 chord to get back down to E, which by the way is exactly the same as earlier. Half notes and bow, bow, triple, triple. All right. Now that's another example of a riff that's going to take you a long time to learn and doesn't get repeated twice. All right, so it's a totally unique section. It has a bunch of really tricky rhythms. And you got to learn 3 different variations, 3 different endings for that. So once again, John Petrucci just wiling out, making us spend hours on stuff that it's noticeable, but at the end of the day, it's really not that noticeable. But hey, you know what? This is why we listen to Dream Theater, because they're so erratic and they do things differently every single time. It's those unique verses and pre-choruses that we keep coming to love with this band, right? If they didn't do that, I don't think we'd like them as much. Isn't that the truth? It is the truth. This is also an example of something that John Petrucci doesn't play live, which I found very interesting. Check out this clip.
How can you keep your head and not go insane?
Not exactly sure why. Maybe it's too hard for him to remember those subtle variations that he puts into his own songs, but hey, whatever the case may be, he doesn't do it, and that is a fact. This idea is extended to pre-chorus 2, by the way, which is completely unique. The only thing that's not unique is the form and function, right? We're still in a C-sharp minor blues, but we play a completely different riff. Now, just like I said, Petrucci plays something different live than he does in the studio, but this example is even more egregious. All right, we'll start with the normal thing that he plays live, and then we'll move on to the more egregious example. Check out what he does in a live setting. And here's what it is on the actual album. Now what in tarnation was that? I ain't seen something this crazy since Auntie Hilda was out plowing the fields. A dog bit her on the ass, hijacked the tractor, drove the tractor down to the police station, and got me arrested for 3 weeks in jail for absolutely nothing. That's some crazy stuff right there, right? And guess what? I don't even think the man himself, on a serious note, could probably remember what he did. I'm going to have to ask John Petrucci one of these days. That's going to be one of my life goals, to figure out, hey, JP, what did you do here? What happened? Now, my best guess in this scenario was that a whammy pedal was involved. So, you got the whammy pedal hooked up. He's playing the regular riff that we saw from the live footage, just shooting up those certain notes up an octave to give it that Dimebag Darrell effect. Remember, Dimebag was on top of the world at this point, still. Back in '97, Pantera was huge. I believe the Trendkill was out. One of the greatest albums of all time. Now, I'm not going to pull a whammy pedal out just for this, but I have a much more fun idea in mind. Now let's learn how to do this damn thing without a whammy pedal. Here we go, ready? Alright, so, much like pre-chorus 1, we're still in a C-sharp minor blues. That is the truth. Unlike pre-chorus 1, we're in some serious trouble because we got some really big stretches we have to contend with. Let's go through some of these bits more finely. Now, we're starting over here on a low C-sharp power chord, much like a lot of this song has so far. So, we're going to do a little bit of hitting and muting for that first part. Now, when we get up to here, we're going to go like this. You're going to bend the 5th fret after you hit it a whole step, and then real slickly grab the 9th fret of the E string, which is C sharp. Okay? Now, right after that, you have to roll your pinky down and hit that. Basically the 9th fret across, either from the G string or from the D string. It's fine, you know? That just makes a C sharp minor 7 at the end of the day anyway, right? But that's what we're going for, that C sharp minor chord way at the top. So, nice. Now right after that, this is why I gotta use your pinky. You gotta come here and use your pointer and ring fingers, so your power chord fingers, to play E, F sharp, and G. Instead of playing it over here like we're used to, we're going to play it here, because now we have to stretch our pinky all the way up to the 12th fret. So, and that's not all. We got to come back down to the E as well at the 5th fret. So watch. Wow, look at that. Here's all that together. Now that's kind of crazy, right? This is how I know that it wasn't actually played this way. Or if it was performed this way, that's just nuts. And John Petrucci deserves even more praise. I would say he's an underrated guitar player at that point, for sure. Those high notes kind of remind me a little bit of White Zombie, right? Right? Just has that vibe to it. Remember, this is the 90s as well. It's just the later part of the 90s. So a lot of these influences coalesce pretty hard at the end of the day. Now after that stupid stretch, we actually play the normal riff this time. So we get a little bit of a break from the craziness. And it's just a straight up C sharp minor blues scale going up there. I guess the creativity ran out after that first part, huh? So you do that hit, mute, mute, open, open, right? The E go to the F sharp, and then right in here. Now this E right here, or the 5th fret, that's actually the downbeat. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. With the 2nd fret being a pickup, right? Oh, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Now right after that, we come right back into the annoying stretch. Right? And then we play this. So that's another variation on the part we play with the C sharp minor blues ascending that we just did. Watch. Once again, this low note, the 2nd fret, that's a pickup into the 1st beat. And then we're going all the way up an octave to here. 4, 4, 2, 2, 3, 5, 1. Big time blues. Using those exact fingers. Almost sounds like a Black Sabbath riff, but we don't get it for very long. One more time. Once again, just a variation on C sharp minor blues. Now the second half, we continue on with that stretchy part. And then we do one more stretchy part, but a lot less arrogant, so to speak. You just come in for 1/9 and then go like this. Palm muting everything except that last E. So one more time there. So get used to sliding up high distances and coming back low distances. One more. That's exactly what you got to do. Make sure you get those mutes in the right spot as well. We continue on to repeat that one more time. Boom! Now wasn't that fun? This is why the isolated tracks are so important when trying to figure this stuff out. Especially when it comes to something as absurd as what we just covered. Now rest assured, we won't be coming in contact with anything like that in the future now, will we? I know, it's disappointing, but we should probably go over the more rational way of going through this part. Let's just do that slowly. Ready? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, da 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 da. All those mutes that are placed in there, you want to make sure you get in the exact right spot. Now in this first half, most of it is not muted. You only have a couple here and there, so make sure you pay attention to the tab when looking at that. Now the second half hits a 6/4 feel, so it's going to be a little clunkier. Very similar to the way Derek's keyboard is going to be playing this later on in the song. And I actually consider this more of a keyboard feature, but at the beginning they play it with all the instruments, so go figure here. But it's going to be more like this. Basically, the only notes that you're going to be unmuting are the two power chords moving like this at the very beginning, and the very last E is just going to be a little pop out right there. So real slow again. Mute, mute, unmute, mute, 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 unmute, unmute, unmute. Right? Pick them out. Pick them out. And that's basically all of the knowledge you need for that section. So after that chugulus sonungulus, we find ourselves in chorus number 2, which basically stays the same instrumental-wise, but let's take this opportunity to talk about the vocals while we're at it.
I got this feeling the tide is turning now, baby.
The approach here, at least at this stage of Dream Theater's career, is a bit of a departure. Considering we are used to soaring high notes way up at the eagle's nest by Mr. James LaBrie, this is a much lower approach. The high harmony is actually in a middle register, okay? And there's a lower harmony an octave below that, which is way uncharacteristic of James LaBrie. What is he, becoming a crooner? Mr. James Sinatra? What do we got to call him, Kevin James Bing Bong Crosby? Get out of here with that. Now there's only one more thing to mention about this chorus 2, and that's that everything's pretty much the same, and we don't have the instrumental tag like we did at the end of the first one. Plus, there is a lower harmony that's piped in on the guitar, a perfect fourth below. Take a listen. And that's just a little subtlety to transition us into the bridge section, which is anything but subtle. I mean, there are subtleties in there, but they amount to something incredibly abrasive. So I'm going to break this down into 4 different parts to make it easier to digest. The first part of the bridge, which I will dub bridge number 1, consists of a bass line that's reminiscent of the earlier C-sharp pedal tones we've been seeing through the whole song, followed by some John Petrucci volume swells coming in over the top. Let's listen to the first bass line with the synthesizer. So Derek is obviously stuck in an endless feedback loop, so there's nothing that we can do for him. But the bass serves as a setup. This whole section serves as a setup to John Petrucci's volume swells. So we have 2 measures of 4/4 followed by a measure of 7, just like we've had in previous parts. But here we're hitting at different points. For the measure of 4, the 2 measures of 4, we're going to hit 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. And on the 7, we're going to hit 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and then right into the 4/4 measure. So that 7/4 measure only has 1 at the end, and the 4/4 measure has 2 at the end. So once again, that 8/4, 7/4 thing coming into play. Let me play it one more time. Ready? 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And that's about all you need to know about the rhythm there. So 2 hits followed by 1 hit, cutting it off for the 7/4 measure. Now after that, we have some beautifully played volume swells from Mr. Petrucci himself. These swells serve to add some atmosphere to the part we're playing, and this is the first standout guitar lead from John Petrucci in the entire song. The first bit carries us through some two-note chords. Be sure to slather plenty of delay, use that whammy bar on here like a wild baboon in the middle of the jungle, and we start over at the 9th and 11th fret right over here. I can't get away from these 9/11s, it's starting to worry me. Anyway, here's the sound it creates. So basically just a regular old power chord, and it's the flat 7th and the 11th. That's a 7/11, that's a little bit different. I think that's a little more auspicious or lucky, if I shall say. And that 7/11 or 9/11 resolves into the 9th fret like this. That's a perfect 4th. That's basically the flatted 7th and the flatted 3rd. Okay, and then moving along we go to here, the 11th and the 13th fret like this. Another power chord, but up a whole step from where we started. That's just a 5th on C sharp. C sharp and G sharp, 1 and 5. Pretty easy. We then go right up to here. This is the 9th fret of the G, 12th fret of the B. That's a flatted 3rd and a flat 7th. Alright, so a lot of 3rds, a lot of 4ths, flat 7ths, all over the place here. So we can say C sharp minor 7 is loosely where we are. Until we hit this. Now that is a tritone. Okay, the most diabolical interval of all time. However, here it's not so diabolical. It's actually a little more jazzy in context with the C sharp. We're hitting the natural 6th. So we're turning that into a C sharp minor 6 chord, which is basically the Dorian mode. I've explained that before. There's that natural 6. Boom. Just adds a little bit of crunch into it. And then for the final note of this section, we go like this. That's just holding out the 14th fret of the B string. That's the root note. So let me go through those slow again. Ready? We got 9/11, 9/9, 11/13, real quick 9/12, 9/11, another 9/11, 14. Alright, and once you hit that 14th fret, you really want to let the whammy bar sauce go buck wild. The second half of the swell shifts focus from two-note chords to now single notes that outline the C sharp minor. So this one you want to pay attention to where the notes are bent. I'll play it slowly for you. We start with a bend on the 17th fret. So you bend and then fade. Then you want to release it almost like a dive, like a bird flying down from the sky. Just like that. And then another swell on the same note. Right? A lot of whammy bar. And then we're going to go up to the 16th fret of the E string like this. This is a G sharp, then 19, 18, and the final bend, which you're going to do the same thing as you did on the first note. So, real slow again, ready? Let it dive, and 16, and let that fall gracefully at the very end, like you're a beautiful dove diving into the water to catch a fish. Very beautiful sight. Now let's go over some of the notes here. So we're actually starting by going up to the 11th. So C sharp minor 11th is pretty prevalent in this song, and it has been since all the way since the beginning, or the 11th I should say, as an interval in general. So we're hitting a F sharp. That's the 11th. Going down into the minor 3rd. So this is the flat 3rd of the C sharp. Here's the 5th, the flat 7th, the natural 6, I almost said 6, it's not the 6, it's the natural 6, which is the Dorian mode, and then going right into the root, and then diving back into a flat 7. But really, the focus is on the high C sharp right there. Right after that section, a familiar arpeggio is played, but down the octave, okay? And it comes in as a rhythm guitar part underneath the second half of those swells. So let's check that out real quick. So there's lots of continuity with this song, and it's a great way of keeping a repetitive part moving without boring you to tears. So instead of this figure being up at the high part, like the chorus, like this, we're going to be playing it at the heart of the guitar, right in the middle register, at the 6th fret of the G and the 4th fret of the A string, right? A C sharp power chord shape, just like this. Mostly muted, same timing. But then you got to repeat it. Alright, so basically all that's happening is we're hitting the same exact arpeggio that we've been dealing with the entire time. At this stage in the game, it's really meant to be a rhythm guitar in the background to the swells, okay? Just to color in some of the parts that the other band members are playing. But right after that, it does become its own thing, building up intensity as it goes on. Ready? Watch. Watch as it builds. And you want to let that C sharp ride for a little bit and then slide right out of it. So, as you can tell, we've built up in intensity as we moved along with that part. And that intensity comes to its absolute climax when the 7th string, the low 7th string octave of that same arpeggio, is added underneath for the final time through. I love digging down deep. So this takes the exact same formula from what we just saw with this arpeggio in this octave, but we're bringing it down from the 4th and the 6th down to the 2nd and the 4th. Which one sounds better to you? Let me know in the comments. Here we go. So this one's full of beef and full of meat. Here we go. Ready? Watch. Same exact thing, but we're only playing it one time through. Watch. More intensity. Nice big vibrato at the end, and you actually want to slide down. I slid up on accident. Don't do that, okay? So this is basically all the same notes, and it just takes the same exact idea that we had since the beginning of the song. Right? All the way from the intro. We're just in C sharp this time. And so far, we've had the pleasure of playing it in 3 different octaves. So just goes to show you, change the octave and it'll change the context entirely. And, you know, it keeps it from being too boring. Because think about how many times this arpeggio has been played already. Unbelievable. Is the new millennium really just a repetition of old? Following that build-up, we hit another breakdown. Build me up, break me down. Build me up, break me down. A dramatic turn of events, indeed. We start off with just the Chapman stick jamming with the drums a little bit in the same timing as we're used to, but we kind of hit some minor 7s and some funky jazz chords in the process. I know that wasn't totally accurate there, but this next guitar part is going to be. And the funk and metal world collide as we begin with a sweep pick. So let's go over that first half once again. So we're starting off at the 11th fret of the D and G and the 9th of the B and the E. This actually creates the top half of what we would know as a sus2 chord, right? If we were, if we didn't realize that the context was C sharp, I would say that that's an F sharp sus2, right? Which then moves down to different sus2s. But the thing is we're on top of a C sharp the entire time, so we have to take that into account. Now all of these notes that occur, which is C sharp, F sharp, G sharp, and C sharp, those create the conditions for a C sharp 11th or a C sharp minor 11th chord. Watch this, ready? You have the root, 11th, the 5th, and the root up top again. Alright, so this even continues as we move down, right? Watch this. These notes right here at 9, 9, 7, 7, That's the B, the E, the F sharp, and the B. That's the flat 7th, the 3rd, the 11th, and the flat 7th. So, C sharp minor 11th between both of those shapes. And then here we're going to C sharp sus2, alright, so, or a 9th. So we have basically G sharp, C sharp, D sharp, and G sharp. That's 5th root, 2nd or 9th, and the 5th doubled up at the top. All of those notes create the conditions for a C sharp minor 11th chord, so that's what we're dealing with. Now, technically speaking, we have to do a sweep pick going like that. You're going up and down, and you want to go all the way up to the E string first and then down like this. So up all the way, and then before you, don't let the pick go past the string. You want to come back, just like that. And then you want to do a quick one. Alright, so a little boom, little tile sweep. And then we got to do another one, and we stop it before hitting the bottom note. So it's a complete sweep, way less complete, and then a little bit less complete, and then we're ready to move back into that. So another important crucial point is this chord right here that we hit right after that. That's on beat 4. Watch. 4. Alright? And that's the end of the 4/4 measures right there. We're ready to move into the 7. So we're going like this. Alright? Now the other important rhythmic point here is the end of beat 6. That's when the bass, or the Chapman stick, is hitting that fancy chord up top. And that's also when John Petrucci is hitting that fancy chord up top as well, in the same, about the same range. So listen to that again. Right on the upbeat of that 6th. The second half of this opts for a total usage of chords, so let's check that out. A lot of the same shapes, but some are a little bit smaller this time around. Watch. Alright, so a lot of those crucial rhythmic points to be pointed out. We're basically starting here again, the first one, and then we're going like this. We're going down and then back up. Outlining those top strings as you move along. 4. Once again, beat 4 is crucial here, but it's on the first measure instead, because on the second measure we hit something much more spastic and Tourette's-like. Watch this. And a much smaller chord shape as well. Instead of holding all 4 strings, we're actually only playing 3. 16, 14, 14. Alright, and that's the flat 7th, root, and the 11th. So once again, we're hitting all these minor 11 notes, right? But here we got to do a sextuplet, right? You're basically going to hit that 7 times technically, but the sextuplet is 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, boom. Right on the downbeat. So you have 6 notes evenly spread out within one beat. And you want to speed it up as much as possible. Maybe have a limp wrist for that. Right? Just so you can get through the notes as quickly as possible. So, then you have that nice twitchy rhythm. That's basically on different syncopations of the 16ths. And keep that 4 going the entire time. And then this last part, what does that first part remind you of? Look at this. It reminds me of Smoke on the Water, but really complicated. This is really sure to make Ritchie Blackmore go into a complete fit of rage and a tailspin. He would probably hate this, honestly. But that's kind of funny. Awful, awful, absolutely terrible. Don't ever play it like that. But nonetheless, it's very short-lived as it only happens once. So let's check out the very last part. So there, you want to make sure you're hitting those 16ths straight like this. And you're going to end on a downstroke. So you're going to go down, up, bump, bump, down. And that downstroke will be on the and of the 6th beat, just like it was prior. Let's get this entire section slow one more time. Ready? 1. Okay, so now we get into the third part of the bridge section, which I am going to call FUBAR. That's right, effed up beyond all repair, and in the most sinister and sneaky way possible as well. I'm going to let this entire bridge part play out. This is bridge section 3, and let you see for yourself the absurdity of it all. Now, unless octave pedals were being used, we're going to have 5, yes, 5 guitars for this section to be gone over, alright? 2 of those guitars are playing in a low and a high octave, along with Derek Sherinian's synth line. So that kind of makes sense. It's right on the downbeat. It's setting up the melodic tone for the riff. The other part is an offset by an 8th note low and high part, playing almost the same notes, but starting it on a lower one so that you can offset it by an 8th note. And it's very, very, very similar in structure. Some very subtle differences. Of course there are subtle differences. There's always subtle differences. But mostly the same. But it creates kind of a cool effect. It's almost like an 8th note delay effect when you think about it. And the notes keep going until they meet up at the end. That's that King Crimson style of hemiola. However, the only difference is the notes never really meet up. They just come to a dead stop after they hit the train tracks, okay? So let's, well actually we have another part as well, that 5th guitar, but let's save that for a little bit later. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Alright, so basically we have the same timing structure as we've always had. We're just going between some very specific notes within this riff. Once again, this is being doubled by the synthesizer, so reinforced. This is the main melodic idea. Now we have a B going to an F sharp right there. Alright, so that's the sus4 going to the root. And then we have an A sharp, which is the 3rd, going to an F sharp. Alright, so little pedal tone F sharp on the bottom until it gives out to give us an E, which is the flatted 7th. Now that's the 5-note repetitive section that we need to understand, because that goes on to repeat again. Watch. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then we have this. Alright, so that's a little back and forth between those two shapes. We have the perfect 4th, which is the sus4, and then the flat 7 and the 3rd. Going back to that. That's almost like a T-Do relationship in the key of B, but we're staying on F sharp the entire time. Anyway, and make sure you go back in between those. That's for the 4/4 measure. Now for the 7 measure, you just cut off that on the last time. And then that's it. That's beat 7 and you're done with that whole part. Now I really need you to remember this cycle of notes because it's going to be pertinent for a part we do a little later. So it's going to be B, F sharp, A sharp, F sharp, E, going twice. B, F sharp, A sharp, F sharp, E once again. And then we do this. B, F sharp, A sharp, E, B, F sharp. Okay? That's going to be for the 4/4, and for the 7/4, that last part is just going to cut off the last B and F sharp. Remember that because it will be critical information in a little while. This can also be split up in 5, 5, and 6. Watch. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And then for the 7/4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, right? Except you gotta hit that note in there. I always skip notes at the worst time when I'm explaining something. It drives me crazy. Makes me have to start the camera up all over again. But guess what? I'm gonna keep that in there because you guys deserve a raw and unedited approach to this, even though this is heavily edited. I can't do this all in one go. I know a lot of you people might think I can, but I'm not Superman over here. Or am I? Now this leads us to the next part, which is basically the higher octave above. So take a listen to what those two sound like together. Okay, so if you want to play that high part, you just play the same exact thing we did down here, except at the 16th fret. See? All the same notes and relationships. Okay? Going through the same exact timing as well. 16, 16, 14, 15, 16, 16. There ain't nothing to it, right? Same fingers too, you just got to crunch them up a little bit higher. The next part is an offset eighth note based on the same exact riff. Not the same exact one, but very similar in nature. Let me play those side by side for you in the low octave so you can really hear what's going on. You see, it sounds very much like a dry eighth note delay, almost like a tap delay, also similar to U2. Now all we're doing is we're starting with an F sharp instead of a B, and that will offset it by an eighth note. Watch, ready? See that? And then we're going to go to the same note over here. So, see how it feels the same? But it's not the same at all because we're actually flipping around the F sharp and the E. You're going to play the E first before the F sharp. Watch this. And you're going to go down to the E for that last part instead of going to the F sharp like you did before. So it's basically the E takes precedent here. So a very important distinction to make, so I'll play it one more time. Watch. E, and then it repeats again to go on to the next part. So believe it or not, this series of notes is also going to be important as well. So let's take that down, we'll jot that down just like this. Ready? F sharp, B, F sharp, A sharp, E. We do that twice. F sharp, B, F sharp, A sharp, E. And then we go like this. Okay, so F sharp, B, E, skip over, A sharp, F sharp, B once again. All right, before it repeats. Okay, so. Pretty cool. It's like it resolves onto the B chord, except we never actually do. We're on an F sharp, remember, silly Billy. Now that's all fine and dandy, but try playing it along with the other instruments. It becomes exponentially more difficult to do because essentially the laws of physics are being flipped upside down. The downbeats that you were used to on the old part are now upbeats, and vice versa as well. So up is down and down is up. So of course that F sharp that we start with causes everything to flip around. Up, up, down, down, up, 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 down, down, up, up. You see how that works? Let me reiterate that once again. Watch. We got the foot tapping. Boom, 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 boom. Up, up, down, down, up, 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 down, down, up, up. So the order of the onset notes, which is B, F sharp, A sharp, F sharp, E, times 2, with the ending B, F sharp, A sharp, E, B, F sharp, and then it repeats, of course, and adjusts for the 7/4 measure, is going to be crucial. And the offset notes are also going to be crucial, which is F sharp, B, F sharp, A sharp, E, A sharp, E, and then repeated twice. Still 5 notes, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then with the ending, right? All right? 6 notes at the end for that 4/4, and then 4 notes at the end for that 7/4. So we have to remember the order of all of these notes because what we're about to hear next will make that more pertinent. It won't sound like it at first, and this is probably one of the most absurd things I've ever heard in my entire life. Even more absurd than that pre-chorus part we heard earlier. Man, I can't even talk halfway through this video, or maybe more than halfway. Who knows? How long has it been? This is a long video. Anyway, I'm going to stop freaking out here. Check out this Easter egg, we'll call it. One of the pinnacle moments of absurdity and just unfair to me to have to learn. Check it out. This is one of the most difficult things I've ever had to learn on the guitar, and I'm not sure it'll amount to anything of importance, except for a nice impressive flex of the cranial cortex, and it'll probably make for great conversation online at the DMV. I guarantee it. Alright, here it is, the first half played slow. Watch. Alright, so, it sounds like a very beepy boopy type of thing. It's like a robot that just learned the F-sharp Mixolydian mode and is just putting out information to you into the world. But really a very odd sounding thing, right? It's all over the place. It's you have to use all four of your fingers and basically span 1, 2, 3, 4 different positions within one go. Check that out. See, I got to stretch all the way here, pinky, middle, and then pointer, pinky there. And then here, once you hit the top part, you got to go ring, pinky, ring, pointer, pinky, blah, 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 blah. So you're going to be seeing a lot of that. So if you want to really learn how to play this technically, just watch how I do it from before and just keep rewinding. Because there's a lot of other stuff to explain with this as well. These aren't just random notes, okay? Remember those notes I told you to memorize or at least keep in your mind? Well, they're going to be pertinent here. Let's check out the names of these notes. I'm going to put those notes actually like next to this here so you can take a look at them while I play this. We have a B, F sharp, an A sharp, an F sharp, and an E. Look familiar so far. Once again, B, F sharp, A sharp, F sharp, E times 2. B, F sharp, A sharp, F sharp, B, F sharp. Can you believe that? All of those notes correspond exactly with what we were just talking about before. You know, the easy riff. This one. Yeah. It's the exact same thing. It's unbelievable. And it continues all the way through the 7/4 measure as well. All the same notes, and I'm absolutely dumbfounded by this. I was dumbfounded when I first noticed it, and I'm still dumbfounded to this day that this was even considered. And I gotta hand it to him. This is one of the most obscure things I think I've ever found in a recording in my entire life. And hopefully none of you already knew about this. If you did, you know, kudos to you, because I don't think we should ever meet up in real life, because I think the world would explode if two people that already knew this got together, because this is like a nuclear bomb of information that I had no idea existed in the first place. Really incredible stuff. And a lot of fun to play once you can actually play it. And the robot beeps and boops continue for the second half. Almost sounds like Genesis at the very end there. Pretty cool. Maybe I'll have to do some Genesis videos at some point. I don't know. Those are hard songs too. But nothing's as hard as this. I've never had a harder time explaining what's going on in my entire life. Even though the concept is relatively simple, it's mind-blowing. It's crazy. Unbelievable. The application is out of this world. Anyway, these beeps go even further. Watch this stretch. Wow. Oh my goodness. 16th, 19th, all the way up there. And then all the way down that. We're skipping 2 octaves at a time here. Oh, sometimes close to 3. Then you have the 15th fret there. We go down, we have to do this. Watch this stretch. 12th fret on the E, 16th fret on the D, 19th fret on the high E. What the hell is that? Right after going here, watch. Unbelievable. This is the hardest way of playing an F sharp 7 sus4 I've ever seen in my entire life. All these beeps and boops are making me go absolutely insane. Next we have this one, which is another way of playing the same chord. F sharp, A sharp, E, B. Sounds kind of ugly when you play it like that, huh? Then we come down to here, 16th. Now we hit some stuff that's a little more manageable. It's within a position we can actually handle, and that John Petrucci has actually played before. Now that almost looks like a B major 7. Kind of cool, but spread out, of course. And then this, open strings right in the middle there. And then we have that little F sharp arpeggio coming down, flat 7 with an open E that's going down more than an octave, and then up, and then this ending here. Unbelievable. So let's take a look at the notes. Remember, we have an offset that is also here. Check this out. We have F sharp, B, F sharp, A sharp, E. That lines up with the offset notes, correct? Okay, mind blown still, right? And then we have to continue on with F sharp, A sharp, E, B, F sharp. Now this doesn't quite line up, but I did a little bit of delineation here, so you didn't have to do all the work. This B and F sharp comes from the tail end of the regular shape. Okay, so last 2 notes of the onset notes. Now, I don't think this was done consciously. I think by this point, John Petrucci's just thinking, well, let's just put some notes that are still within the pattern, right, within this big sus4 arpeggio shape, and we'll just shake them up and use it as a grab bag. So I think that's what's happening here. So once again, F sharp, B, F sharp, A sharp, E, okay, F sharp, B, F sharp, A sharp, E, B, F sharp. Alright, so that lines up with that part. Now the last part actually does go back to the pattern, but it alternates between the off pattern, on pattern, off pattern. F sharp, B, F sharp, A sharp, E. That's the first 5 notes of the off sequence. And that goes to the first 4 notes of the on sequence. B, F sharp, A sharp, F sharp, E. Just in a really dilapidated and haphazard way. B, F sharp, A sharp, F sharp, E. And then finally we have the final 4 notes of the off pattern. So F sharp, B, E, A sharp, and that caps off the entire thing. This whole section reminds me of going to the airport and flipping every single plane upside down, but while nobody's there and nobody can see it. So it's in the middle of the night, nobody's watching, nobody's looking. You flip all the planes over, and then before you leave, you flip them back over again. So you've just played the ultimate prank, a series of federal crimes that nobody even knows you've done in the first place. It would be like somebody turning off the entire electrical grid during Y2K, but in the middle of the night while everybody's sleeping, just to turn it on again before everybody woke up, and you go around telling everybody, just kidding, that was just a joke, but they had no idea you did anything in the first place. What an absolute psychopath. For the love of all that's holy, let's move into the next part, please. Now this 4th bridge part is actually quite difficult to play, and obviously difficult to play. It sounds hard, and it is pretty hard, but it's not like the last section where it was not obvious at all that there was something incredibly difficult beneath the surface. This would be like going to a military airfield and flipping all their planes over, but leaving them there for them to get to in the morning. They're not going to be too happy, and it's going to be obvious that you've committed a serious federal crime. There are some very technical things to go over, so let's just get right into it. We come back to a very familiar shape that's basically an octave up from where we were before. But we're up here. Alright, so we're going to play 5 notes just like that. And then we're going to go like this. 5 notes again, but add 2 at the end. So it's really going to be 5 plus 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Alright? Just 2 extra notes at the end of the 5. And then we got to hit a series of 16th notes like this. Now that's basically a sus4 arpeggio, an F sharp 7 sus4. Watch. And that's literally the same arpeggio. A sharp, F sharp, E. F sharp, A sharp, F sharp, E. Boom. All the same notes, but starting up here instead. And you want to alternate pick absolutely everything in this section. Not a single thing gets pulled off or hammered on. Right? So let's do that whole thing slow. Ready? Watch. Alright, you want to make sure you're tracking the strings as you move. Boom. Yeah, your palm should always be following your pick. Just behind it, trailing behind, so you can basically get rid of any unwanted string noise underneath. Very useful tip, by the way. We come back into the 7/4 measure where we do something similar at the beginning. We just play those 5 notes and then rip right into a bunch of 16th notes, but syncopated this time. So we're starting the 16ths off the beat. Watch. Takes us all the way through the measure of 7. So basically what we have is this. 1 and 2 and 3 and a 4 and a 5 and a 6 and a 7 and you see that? Those are all the 16ths that carry you all the way from the end of beat 3 to the end of beat 7. So once again, finger-wise, you might want to use the pinky, ring, middle, and pointer for those respective frets for the slow part. Right? And then once you hit this part, hit ring, pointer all the way. Might make it a little bit easier to move fast. So ready? Let me play all that slow. Using that pinky also makes it easier to come up from the lower frets. If you noticed here, watch. It's a lot easier to get from the 12th fret of the low E up to the 16th using pointer and pinky, so keep that in mind. Up until this point, the guitar and the synth are playing in unison, but this changes with the second part of phase 1. The guitar plays a higher harmony while the synth stays on the lower part we just played before. And the guitar is going to play something like this. Same position with the pinky. Now, instead of doing this, we're going to do this. So we're harmonizing that part we played before. So, starting up, 17-14. 16-15, 16-14, and then 14-13. Now that's a nice little resolution. You know, a little crazy, but it does mirror the other part. So basically we have this. And you want to make sure you're alternate picking once again. The second part sees some crazier stuff going on. We basically start off the same. But then right after those 5 notes in the spirit of the last part, we're going to hit this. Now that last part is going to wind up being an incredibly fast run, almost 30-second notes. So let me play it full speed. That's really what it's going to be. So you got to let it rip right at that last part. And let me describe what's going on. We got the 14th fret, 15th, 17th. So, and then the 16th to the 15th again. And then once you hit down here, 16th, 14th, you want to hit this pattern. That's basically an E arpeggio, right? Because you're going down to here, or ending the last part there, and then hitting with this. And then a chromatic run from 16, 15, 14, 11. Now that last fast part that we just did, that goes right along with this drum fill that Mike Portnoy plays. The final part of phase 1 is the same as the first part of phase 1. So, if you were paying attention before, you're going to be doing just fine. If you weren't paying attention before, you better start paying attention now because we're going to be playing the exact same notes. Just like this. Nice and cleanly as well. You want to make sure that pick is really rocking through that alternate pattern. The only difference here is that the drums and the bass, and the keyboards actually, are playing hits along with this. Hits and fills are the name of the game right here, and this sets the tone perfectly. In the next phase, we're going to see a modulation into E with those same hits and fills going on, just with some fancier time changes. That's right, we have more time changes coming up, so check this out. The notes all go along with an E7 sus4 shape, also adding the sus2 in there as well to create some time changes along the way. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. You see that? All eighth notes. Same position as the F sharp, but we're down in the E position now at the 14th fret, then the 13th to the 12th, and then we go 14, 13, 11, and then going down. That's creating a ninth sound, or better yet, a sus2. sus4, sus2. Alright? Then following that, we have a measure of 3-4, where we go down this series of 16th notes all the way. Watch. That's just the E sus4 arpeggio shape being played in that little box. 14, 13, 14, 12. Going up to the 13th fret, continuing, adding the 14th fret of the A string, and then finishing it off like that. So here's that first half once again. Just make sure you get all those notes down in there. The next part introduces another odd time signature. We have a measure of 5-4 going into another measure of 3-4. So 3-4 is the continuous point right here. Now, unlike that 6-4 measure, we're not just doing straight eighth notes. We have some 16ths syncopated in the style that we saw before. Watch. 1 and 2 and 3. You see those 16ths right at the end? And a 5-enda. That's what's happening there. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and a 5-enda. Pretty cool rhythm right there. One more time. And you want to make sure you're going right down to the 12th fret of the D string, okay? Which then leads us to this incredibly fast burst of notes in 3-4 timing, but all sextuplets this time, right? 16th note triplets, so you're going to have 6 notes per beat. Watch. 1, 2, 3. All the way up. Watch. That's 12, 14, 16, 13, 14, 16. Then again, repeat that. Go up to the next one, 14, 15, 17. Repeat it. And then go 14, 16, 17. That sounds like a Christmas song. Pretty cool. But basically you want to really just blast that up like this. You see that? Make the sound with your mouth. If you can do it like that, you'll be fine. You'll actually be in a better place if you can sing these as well. Even better yet, do them both at the same time. So, that whole thing, 5-4, right in. So there's no break in between those two things either. So let's get that whole bit, and I'm going to count in the process. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3. And then eventually we're going to land up here. On that high-ass note way at the top. That's a B, by the way. We're going to be coming back into F sharp, okay, to come back into the original key center and continue some higher octave stuff, but in the same style. In addition to coming back into the key of F sharp, we also go back into the key of E as well. So this part actually hits both key centers that we saw through phase 1 and 2. So phase 3 is sort of like an amalgamation of both of those phases. So right there, we're playing this same shape, but all the way up at the 19th fret of the high E string, all right? Same notes though. These are all the F sharp 7 sus4 shapes. Watch. 19, 19, 18, 19, 17. Do that twice. And then add that extra one right at the end. So, as soon as you're done with that, we actually slide nicely a whole step down into that high harmony shape from phase 1. Watch. F sharp 7 sus4 once again. Slow one more time. High harmony. Very nice. This next part follows a similar idea, but you're going to see a difference toward the end. Watch. You see that very final part? Where that high harmony usually played that fast blast E arpeggio? We're actually doing something that's more normal, which is kind of funny, right? We're following right along with the scale, just like we should have earlier, okay? So that's what the lower part did. Well, now we're mimicking more what that lower harmony is doing here. So, and all we're doing is tacking on the 13th and 14th fret here, and then 16, 14, 13. That's starting at the natural 6, going flat 7th, and then down 5, 4, until you resolve at the major 3rd. Now this is basically hot cross buns. Right? It's basically that classic rock and roll sound with that 5th, that 6th, and the flatted 7th. That's a little too bluesy right there. We're not going to go that far into it. And all that has the same timing as phase 1. Check this out. I'll play it slow. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So it's all the same timing. I know counting that can be very difficult, but you have to at least understand where those syncopated parts and those hard downbeats lie. And not the song lie. Let's keep going with this part where we go to E this time. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 5 and 6 and. Alright, going through that same pattern we had down here, right? Except we're up an octave. And then we hit this. Now that's kind of similar to this one, right? It's almost exactly the same, but we're starting on a slightly different note. We're actually up one note, actually 2 notes higher than we would be. So we're starting all the way up here. This is the flatted 7th, by the way. Flat 7th, 5th, 4th, 3rd, and then coming down. That's all just the same 4 notes as well. That's just an E7 sus4. Very nice at the end of that, tagged onto the 6/4. So, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3. Pretty cool. Now here we hit probably the fanciest time change of the entire part. Let me go through it for you real quick. Now most notably, you might notice there's a measure of 5/8 in there. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's 5 straight beats, an 8th note count of 16th notes. Now when you have 16th notes in an 8th note count, there's only 2 16ths for every 8th. So watch. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, which then hits the next downbeat. So let's count that again. 1, 2, 3, 4, and a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now for that ending there, we're just basically playing 2 sets of 8th notes right on the first 2 beats. 1 and 2 end, and that's an E sus4 once again, E7 sus4. It's crazy how much you can milk this for all it's worth. Then we basically take that down the octave, sort of, but we're going to play triplets, 8th note triplets, to seal off this entire instrumental section. Very nice. These notes are more reminiscent of what I would say is a C-sharp Phrygian, right? We're aiming to get back into C-sharp, so what better way to do that than to have a half-step resolution? Look. And that's textbook Phrygian right there. We're starting on the flatted 2. And we're coming down these notes flat 2 again, right down to that C sharp. Now all the notes in E Mixolydian line up with a C sharp Phrygian. So this is how you can kind of transition between those different key centers without even batting an eye. Very, very, very slick and very, very smooth. And let me do this entire thing one more time slowly. The entire, all 3 phases right through. Kind of slow. Here we go. Ready? Unison. Harmony. Again. Bass flip. Hits. Modulation. Time change. And high octave. Lots of vibrato on that final note as well. Excellent. Well, now that we're finally out of that geometric maelstrom of a bridge, we can finally get to something nice, something easy. So let's just enjoy John Mayung playing a C-sharp pedal tone for a little bit, while it lasts. Ah, the sweet sounds of simplicity. You gotta love that. You don't get that enough with DT, right? The sweet sounds of simplicity. Interrupted by Derek. This is arguably the heaviest riff in the entire song, and it's not even played on a guitar. Hell, this might be the heaviest riff in Dream Theater's entire career. I know I'm going to take a lot of heat for that one because it's a very contrarian opinion. And even if I'm joking, which I'm not exactly sure if I am, it's still one of the greatest emulations of a guitar I've ever heard on a keyboard. You hear a lot of cheap imitations of the guitar happening on the keyboard these days, or even in the past especially because the technology wasn't that great, but this sounds awesome. This is one of the best keyboard emulations of the guitar I have ever heard in my entire life. But unfortunately, it is interrupted by a real guitar. Now this part of the studio version also has that crazy whammy part that I detailed before. But I'm still just going to show you the way that it's done live, the way that John Petrucci actually plays it when he performs this song, instead of doing it the alternate way, which, hey, the choice is yours if you want to suffer more. Right? If you want to play that, by all means, go ahead. I'm not going to stop you, but like I said, you're going to suffer a whole hell of a lot more if you do it that way. So we're detailing that pre-chorus section once again, but here we're following a little more closely to what Derek Sherinian is playing. But before we do that, we have to do this stupid little thing. Basically, you're just chopping, karate chopping the pick right into the 9th fret. We're actually at the kind of right off the neck, right? Creating almost like a harmonic on top. And you're going to karate chop it right there. 9th fret. Or, that's actually emulating Derek's keyboard sound. Now, who did it better? I think the keyboard sounds a lot cooler here, to be honest with you. But hey, this is what happens when you're in a band. Some guy will play a sound on their instrument, and then the other guy is going to want to emulate it as closely as possible, and I think that's what happened here, right? Now, Derek's just happens to sound more wah wah wee 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 wee. You know, this doesn't have that wah wah wee 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 sound. It just sounds like a guitar. Not as cool as a keyboard trying to sound like a guitar, and succeeding, by the way. Anyway, let's get into this riff here. We're basically playing the pre-chorus section from earlier of Your, but we're actually muting a lot more of the notes. We're playing it a lot more in the style of the keyboard. Still in 6/4. So So once again, the only two notes that really aren't muted are the E and the F sharp that ascend. Every other time when you're playing it like this, they're all muted, including that last one. That's muted as well. This sounds great. I love this riff. Now, at the very end, we're actually tacking on a little bit of a time change there. Instead of playing it in 6/4, we're going to be playing it in 4/4. Watch. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay? And then that leads into this crazy, 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 crazy thing that happens afterward. Check this out. That's right, that's two guitars playing an octave apart, playing a very, very, very fast thing. 16th notes at the start, and then 16th note triplets after that. That's kind of some crazy stuff right there. So let's break it down a little bit. Basically starting at the 5th fret of the B string, going between the 5th and the 4th. So 5, 4, 5, 4, 5, 4. And then doing that once, 6th to 4th. That's outlining a C sharp minor 7th or a 9th, because you're going flat 3rd to 9th, and then root to flat 7th. All alternate picking. And then we're really going to have to blast through. This is all C sharp minor pentatonic, like this. Just going down. It seems like a very unassuming type of thing, but we're going down this fast. Now you might want to add a little bit of palm mute, because I think there is in the articulation. But you got to get down all of those notes at that great speed and following those 16th notes. So watch, look at the fingering. You want to keep it like that. Pinky pointer, pinky ring, and then pinky pointer, pinky ring, and then end on that C sharp. Now you have a little bit of forgiveness here because of how fast it's going. The human ear can only hear things so quickly, right? So even if you miss like 1 or 2, nobody's really going to care or notice that much, but still strive for 100% accuracy on this. Now let's just go over the high part real quick. It's the same exact deal, the same notes, so I'm not going to go over all that, but we have the 12th fret and the 11th fret this time, then 14th, 12th. So real slow. All alternate picking, right? One more time. 16th notes, alternate picking. Then we got to hit back into this pentatonic shape. The same notes up top, but this time we're going to be in more of a, I would say, a traditional looking pattern here. This is the C sharp minor scale that everybody is accustomed to. That one, except we're barreling down it at extreme speeds. Watch. Check that out again. One more time. That was completely wrong. That was right. That was wrong. And that was completely right. So make sure you get it right. You got to get more consistent than I am with this, okay? But basically we're just going down like this. 12, 9, 12, 9, 11, 9. So that's an 11, 9, not a 9, 11. So we're safe. Then 12, 9, 11, 9, 11, 9, 11. So a lot easier to play than the other shape. Okay, we're pretty much done with all the extremely difficult parts of this song, okay? So give yourself a pat on the back, but we still have a little bit more to go as we come back into the final chorus, okay? Which is really a double chorus. The only real difference to talk about with chorus number 3 is James LaBrie's Mickey Mouse vocals over the top here. A very high falsetto coming in over the low harmony, which is now technically a middle harmony.
I got this feeling the tide is turning now, baby.
The second half of this chorus sees a change in that dyad riff, or that 2-chord thing from way before. Remember when I talked about the U2 soy latte kind of thing, the tofu soy latte? Who wants tofu and soy in their latte? I don't think anybody actually gets that, but you know what? It's kind of funny to think about. But this is the same exact sort of deal. It still has those hot 7-string chords on the bottom, right? But there's a slight difference in the high part, and I want to see if you notice it. intermittent parts, where it goes back to the B, remain very similar to the ones that we saw earlier on, so I won't go into too much detail there. But this first part, watch this. After that final 9th fret, we have to hit this pull-off right here at the 7th and 6th, and then 2 picks. So, you want to make sure you're hitting that only twice, by the way, so. And that's right on beats 3 and 4. And that's outlining an F sharp 7 sus 4. Boy, where have we seen that before, right? It sounds very nice when you have it with that articulation and real tight. You want to make sure it's the tightest you've ever played it. We continue going down. That one you just straight up go through those double stops with that F sharp major to B coming back and forth. Nothing really to say about that. Then we come back up to here, watch. Cut off the last one and then do 3 of these in lieu of 2. Right in a row. Now those 3 actually go right along with Mike Portnoy's double bass drum. Once again, you gotta love that interplay between the band. Once again here. Pretty cool. And then the final part just goes like this. Just like the earlier iteration. So we finally have something that's a little more consistent than what we've been led on to believe. Alright, well, we have one little bit left to go over. It's basically 2 guitars rehashing similar ideas we've already heard. So enjoy this outro as we reflect upon what we have accomplished thus far, which has been quite a lot. And since that's all we have left, I'm just going to play each of those parts nice and slow for you so we can cap this off gracefully. Here's the low part. Boom! And that final C sharp is actually the end. Except we got to hit the high harmony as well, simultaneously at the same time. You got to duplicate yourself. Here we go, ready? Alright, and also you got to make sure you have a lot of wah on that as well. Alright everybody, that is going to do it for this installment of Let's Learn Falling into Infinity. This has been a wild one. I did not think New Millennium was so dense when I first started looking at this, and then I found out that it indeed was. Shout out to the man that sent me all of the isolated tracks for this. I thank you very much. I wouldn't have been able to do all that cool stuff that I found without your help there. I'm not going to say your name because, you know, we don't want to be doxing people on here. Not a cool thing to do. Anyway, thank you so much for coming along this journey. It's been a wonderful time going through, or albeit a very stressful time, but it was well worth the stress to try to get everything together for you. Hopefully you learned a lot. I know I did. Throughout this whole thing, and hopefully every single note, every single time change, everything came together for you in the end, okay? Now, if you'd like to further support the channel, go to www.subscribestar.com/RomanOva Music, where you can pledge any amount of money per month, and you can even join the RomanOva Guitar Gym, which is an exclusive set of videos just for your level of patronage. That's $20 a month. Well worth it, because it's all stuff that I make specifically for you. Nice long videos, all sorts of theory stuff, exercises, blah, 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 blah. Another way to show support is to leave a tip on the PayPal. And another way to show support, just like the video. Make a comment. Make a mean comment if you want. Mean-spirited comment, a nice-spirited comment. I got a vast majority of people, beautiful comments. Beautiful people that are on this channel. The most beautiful people on this channel. I dropped my pick on the ground. I'm a little bit fried, as you can't tell, right? But we have the best fans on this channel. Absolutely. Everybody here is just so supportive. They just want to see this stuff get rocked. All right? They want to see their favorite songs just get, you know, pummeled into the ground and rebuilt like a giant fortress that is not shattered, as we should see. Alright everybody, I'm starting to run out of steam here, so I'm going to end this video right now. I'll see you on the next one. Peace out.